Welcome to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP, in association with TheLibertyBeacon.com. And I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Lenard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show. Welcome, everybody. Let's start with the obvious. Who are you and your background?
Hi, so thrilled to be on today. My name is Chris Morehouse. My background is I studied African development, that is specifically economic and social development, with every course where I took every opportunity to focus on Africa. For my master's, it's a Master of Public and International Affairs. Quite a long time ago in Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh. My life took a different turn, and I'm grateful for it, and that's fine. But that's always stayed with me because during my time there, I met folks from Mali and Kenya and Tanzania and Nigeria. And I started collecting books of African proverbs at that time. And those books always stayed with me. And I'd go and I'd occasionally pick them up and peruse them and put them back. Even before that, though, as a kid, I was that weird kid who would reach for African Kingdoms, the Time Life volume, on my parents' bookshelf, or I ordered, Teach Yourself Swahili on records. Remember LPs? I can still read an elder. I can't explain why I was drawn to this, but I found it fascinating, and I found the cultures fascinating. So about 7, 8 years ago, I came across this series of books called The Parallel Sayings of Jesus and Moses and Muhammad and Krishna, Buddha, Lao Tzu, and comparing across the great traditions, right? Verses from the sacred writings of both on topics like compassion and forgiveness, and they're really eye-opening and really exciting to read them. I think they're out of print now, but you can still find them. I wondered, where's the African version? Why isn't there an African version? There really ought to be. And so I, with some holy boldness or perhaps foolishness, I jumped in and I thought, well, I guess I'll do it. The closest I could find was Archbishop Desmond Tutu in the early 90s issued a book called An African Prayer Book, with parables and liturgies and prayers and some proverbs, but not paired with verses from the Bible. And that's, as far as I can tell, that's the only thing that was comparable that was out there. So I got started, and in the process of putting it together, it slowly dawned on me, I'm using all my African proverbs compilations, and I sought out more. I sought out other books and online resources, but it occurred to me I'm an outsider to these traditions. I don't speak the languages, so it behooved me to sort of get perspective. So I wound up with over 30 African collaborators, not from every culture represented in the book, but from some major ones: the Yoruba, Zulu, the Swahili, Mali, Senegal, and others, to ask, is this really a proverb in your culture? And a couple dropped out that when they told me no, they're not. Even though they appeared in these compilations I'd gotten earlier. So, is this really a proverb in your culture? How is it used? Is it used with children, for example? And how can that help us understand? And then, are there translation issues that we should be aware of that would enhance our understanding of English? Because translation is, as you know, is always a tricky problematic, challenging kind of affair. So, and it turned out there were some enriched understandings related in the language. But what is really striking about these proverbs is they're so vivid and they're so concise, and they offer deep insights in a small package. They're proverbs in predominantly oral cultures. Not all African cultures were only oral. Ethiopia has a rich written tradition, but proverbs, are designed to be memorable. They're vivid. They may have certain rhymes, or they may have certain, they have alliteration. There's a certain rhythm sometimes, because that's how the knowledge is passed down. But which also reminds me, among my 30 collaborators to whom I'm so indebted and so grateful, some of them said, I bring certain specialized knowledge. Oh, okay, tell me. And a couple said, well, I have access to a national library. Okay, you can help. Another said he had access to a royal family. And another said she had access to rural women. I said, oh, you're in, definitely. Because all of these are keepers of the knowledge, right? So I really wanted to for them to corroborate the knowledge that I recognized in these diverse proverbs. So I wound up with about 300 African proverbs that rhyme with or resonate with Bible verses, and that's how the book came together. It was issued last August, and it's available on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. I think you kind of. I wanted to say, I almost forgot.
Sorry.
Biblically, we have one eternal spiritual soul, but the Bible itself doesn't really preclude reincarnation per se, like other cultures say there is reincarnation. So maybe that little young you was tapping into a previous life from that continent, right?
Joseph, I don't know about that. I've not given it much thought, but perhaps reincarnation doesn't typically figure in African traditions. But what surprised me was that one of them, in explaining Zulu culture in particular, said the Africans believe in karma, which I thought, that's a Hindu concept. That's really, really strange. But what you'll find is that a lot of proverbs refer back to the person. There's for the verses from the Bible that give us some context to understand this kind of thing when there's wisdom emerging organically. In Proverbs 8, you may or may not know, we encounter a personified feminine spirit of wisdom, sometimes called Lady Wisdom, Hama. And I think I got that right in Hebrew. And she says, I have words of truth on my lips, and I stand at the city gate. And it's a long passage, and at the end she says, those who find me find life, and those who fail to find me will harm themselves. If you don't find her, if you don't find wisdom, you're going to learn the hard way. Mm-hmm. And that very truth is embodied in so many of the proverbs I came across. So perhaps that's a way of thinking about karma.
Now, you kind of already covered this, but I see you are Christopher technically, but on your book it indeed is listed as Chris Morehouse. Yes. I'm sure, yeah. Less of a castle, more of a house. But I knew there'd be a pun in there somewhere. I can never pass on the lame jokes. But obviously, then I was going to ask you which do you prefer, but obviously
Chris.
You prefer Chris because indeed that's what is listed on the book. It's listed as Chris
Yes.
Morehouse, and I'm sensitive to names because my last name looks French. It's not. It looks like Leonard. It's Leonard without an O. So I always
Oh,
try to make a big deal about we get your name right, you know.
thank you.
And
Yes.
there is also a Joseph Leonard out of North Carolina that's an author, so I have to
Oh,
make that distinction. But uh, I don't remember if you did or did not give actually the specific title. What is the
oh,
title of the book?
it's, pardon me, it's Legacy, Wisdom of African Traditions and the Bible. And here's what it looks like.
For those who can see on the behind the scenes
No,
video,
no.
but most people will be saying, "Oh, great, another guy holding up a book that I can't see because this is
I'm
an
sorry.
audio only show." But so repeat the title again.
It's Legacy, Wisdom of African Traditions and the Bible.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
it's a paperback, and you can also order an ebook on Amazon, and an audiobook is forthcoming.
Ah, yeah, I just did an audio version for my ChristiTutionalist politics book. A lot of people ask, but you're never assured that they're going to sell. So you got to watch your input costs so that there is some ROI. You're not eating up all the profits of your hardcovers doing an audiobook that doesn't sell. But I would think, given the proverbs are a lot, like you said, our oral tradition, in a way that lends itself to an audiobook. I hadn't really thought about that point till now. So hopefully that helps sell an audio
Well, thank you.
version. And obviously we don't want to give away the whole book. One favorite of mine is, I'll give an example. Uh, there is, if you know what hurts yourself, you know what hurts others, which apparently relates to other cultures. Oh man, what you do not like, do not do to your fellows. That'll sound very familiar to do unto others, right? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Have you ever seen those posters comparing the golden rule in
Oh,
different traditions?
I thought
Do
you
unto
were
others.
I thought you were going to mention the hanging cat. Hang in there, baby. No, I,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry. Again, I can never pass on the stupid, lame jokes. I'm
It's
sorry.
okay. It's okay.
Go back to
It's
what
quite
you were
okay.
saying. The posters
But
that say what?
there are versions of do unto others in all the great faith traditions. The Jewish tradition, for example, according to Hillel, says that which is hateful to you, do not do unto your neighbor. That is the whole of the Torah. The rest is commentary. Go study. Love that last part. Go study. Um, so there are by one count there are like 21 versions of the Golden Rule in all the great faith traditions. You look up that footnote, and that those authors omitted the African traditions as well. I don't know why. But if you ever find like one of those posters comparing the Golden Rule and in the different faith traditions, look for the African versions. Odds are you will not find one. And I don't know why that is, but perhaps there's, oral tradition might be devalued. It's only proverbs. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm sure I missed a few.
Yeah.
But as you noted, you read two of them, and I found at least seven versions of the Golden Rule
I,
in African proverbs.
yeah, I'm
And the
looking.
first one, if you know what hurts yourself, you know what hurts others. That's from Madagascar. And my Malagasy collaborator said, "Oh, two things. That the word that means hurt that gets translated as hurt in English actually means pinch in our language in Malagasy. if you, and the other part is, yes, this is used with children. So putting those two things together, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a mother's voice. Has the firmness of a mother's voice. Don't pinch someone. You know what a pinch feels like, right? There's the firmness of a mother's voice and the tenderness of a mother's voice. So, again, my African collaborators really enriched my understanding of how these proverbs are used and passed down.
Yeah, and the other that I did give was from the Congo, and the other two that I see listed are from Ghana, which is pretty straightforward, a longer sentence than the other ones. What you do not find acceptable if it were done to you by another, do not do to him or her, which, of course, is just indeed a longer way of saying the don't do unto others. and then the Yoruba, you mentioned Yoruba earlier, Nigeria, what you can't take, do not do unto others. So yeah, I really liked that out of the book. But again, we want people to buy the book. We don't want to give them all away. So that's the only one I'm going
I would give it away free.
Only one I'm going to bother to pull out of the book, but instead kind of pivot to what's not in the book, like everyday phrases. Like one thing that immediately came to my mind was, I think of going to the biblical ties or how they write, everyday phrases people use nowadays, but we don't think of them as biblically tied in any way. Like, I'm a fan of Rick Springfield. Yeah, I wish I had Jesse's. No, oh my God, I think that's his worst song. But, without that kind of cute, clever, catchy song, he wouldn't have gone on to do all his other far better stuff, in my opinion, as he did. And one song he's got is called Written in Rock. Well, right there, obviously, a biblical reference to the Ten Commandments. And I'm leaning over to unplug my phone because I forgot to unplug it. I don't know if you heard it ring, but in Written in Rock, he says a line about, we may as well have missed by a mile as missed by the skin of our teeth, which of course refers to Job 19:20. But yeah, a lot of people use the skin of our teeth, and they've got no real understanding of the origin. And that's true of a lot of things, I think. Like what you're saying, others may not have the biblical reference, but may have occasionally or casually heard it of the African or other proverb, and it's there in the Bible also, whether which one predated which, it isn't necessarily the argument here. And right. Like the love of money is the root of all evil, right? Well, people often say money is the root of all. Well, that's not what actually the Bible says. It says the love of the money is where the problem, the greed, the sin is. 1 Timothy 6:10. Speaking of music, Fight the Good Fight. Another favorite Canadian band of mine is Triumph, which has a song literally called Fight the Good Fight, right? We all talk about wanting, not if you have a labor of love, then you're not really working for a living, right? Well, right. 1 Thessalonians 1:3 refers to an labor of love. And I've got man does not live by bread alone. You don't have to be Jewish or Christian to understand the sense in that, and a lot of people use it without having any clue about Deuteronomy 8:3, if I can, put the words in my mouth, right? 2 Samuel 14:3, put your house in order. 2 Kings 20, Isaiah told Hezekiah, who was ill that he should put your house in order because you are going to die. So, I mean, on and on and on. We've had all these different sayings we still have now, some of which that originated before the Bible, some directly taken out of the Bible, right?
Joseph, just as you said, you don't have to be Christian or Jewish or Muslim or from an African traditional religion to recognize the wisdom in these proverbs, and they can speak to people in any background or tradition. The thing about the proverbs is, just like the Bible verses, they dig down deep into your soul, and they help sort of give you perspective and a mindset to navigate life, to orient yourself, and to find your place, in respect to God, yourself, and others. And it's just regarding the teachings about greed, for example, that you started off with. There's a great Yoruba proverb: "The wealth that enslaves is not wealth." I mean, that's it. That's it, right there.
Yeah, that's great. In biblical terms, that you're beholden or trapped by that wealth and that greed, at the detriment of your soul. Now, I wrote out this question. People on the behind the scenes could see me waving the paper, so let me read this specifically, because although I think alluded a bit to it, but to ask it direct. Is it your contention that some, many, most were created knowing the biblical roots, but not wanting to directly quote the Bible, or some, many, most just happenstance to being similar?
That is such a great question, and I don't know. I mean, I do. You'll find in the book, in a couple places, I note where, there may be some Christian background to this. There may be some Christian influence to this. For example, there's a proverb from Ethiopia that is just beautiful. Singing hallelujah everywhere does not prove piety.
Amen.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is the same idea as about, keeping your prayer private, and don't want to be seen in the marketplace conspicuously, in front of others. Don't show off. Don't show off. Don't sing hallelujah everywhere. I love that. Now, Christianity had a cradle in a sense, in Ethiopia. There's the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts, and King Ezana of Aksum, which is now located in modern Ethiopia, converted to Christianity in AD 600. There is a long Christian tradition in Ethiopia, so that proverb probably reflects that context, but in structure, it is just so different from the way Jesus expressed it. It's hard to know, but there's, it might just reflect a popular understanding based on the Christian teaching. It's philologists and language experts might be able to date these, but dating oral traditions is really, really tricky. There's a proverb from Namibia that's northwest of South Africa. The Abambo say, eyes see me too, which is all about seeing the beam in your own eye and not focusing, see me too, not on the mote in someone else's. It's just a different idiom. It's a different way of saying that very same thought. So, that Namibia is pretty far away from the Holy Land, pretty far separated culturally, and the structure, an imperative to a body part, to your eyes, it's structured differently from the motes and beams language that Jesus uses. It's the same idea. So that one, maybe not, but so I do mark, in 2 or 3 places, look, this could reflect a Christian influence. but it's really hard to say. There, you know, you be the judge, but also you come down to is how old is it? What are the influences? Is that beside the point? There's still wisdom in it. You know, there are several African versions of "You reap what you sow," right? Worldwide too, in all cultures, that idea just emerges naturally, and some of the African versions reference crops that are you know, you can't plant okra and expect cacao. You know, chocolate is a New World crop, so that had to have emerged later. But there are other versions without the New World crop, so you know, it's just really hard to say.
Yeah. Now
I give you as much information. You be the judge, or the reader be the judge.
right. I asked that question to lead to something else I wanted to set up, but
Yes,
you
sir.
had mentioned something that a new rabbit hole, a different direction. First, I want to go down now. Like, I used to wear a cross, but I ended up losing it. So, you know, I got a cross tattoo. Now, where is that line is the question, right? Like you're saying about we want to be open about our faith and demonstrate our faith, but we want to lead and demonstrate our faith by our life, and that people know we're Christian and us as an example of it, versus where indeed the saying hallelujah everywhere all the time, is that really real professing of faith, or is it putting on airs? Right? It's
Right.
it's about boasting. It's about I'm holier than all you, and I'm going to be sure to let you know it. Right?
That's it.
That's where the issue or the problem can come in with that.
Right. And it's interesting because there's a version of that proverb in Swahili culture. Now the Swahili, today there are Christian Swahili speaking people, but from all faiths. But traditionally, it was a traditionally Muslim society. They were under the Sultanate of Oman for about 100 years. So some of the Swahili proverbs definitely evoke sort of a Muslim context. And there's one, the fear of God is not wearing a white turban. It's the same idea. Don't show off.
Right.
It's not about what you wear. It's about what's inside.
Yeah,
right?
it's right. Yeah. We hear you professing, or we see you dressing a certain way,
right?
But are you really, when it comes down to it, living the faith rather than just trying to present yourself as living the faith, right? Yeah, these can be touchy issues, can be very touchy, but indeed, right, it's not just professing, it is you shall be known by your fruits. Also, actions do matter. And indeed, like the saying, a lot of times speak louder than words.
That's it.
For another turn of phrase, and since we're dealing in terminology and phrases and proverbs and that. But I brought up that question because I saw a 2002 movie the other day, and here's where we'll really tie into the ChristiTutionalist part of this show, called Time Changer. And here's where then I question the proverbs. Like I have said over and over, you can be moral and you can profess morality and good things without quoting the Bible. Like Penn of Penn and Teller is a well-known devout atheist.
Yes.
And he says over and over, he's got no problem, though, with Judeo-Christianism because do unto others is social, being a good human. It's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
I don't murder you. You don't murder me. You have no right to steal my stuff, nor I yours. These can be common sense, being a good social human. But that removes God from it, which is the point of the Time Changer movie. Is it dangerous to people's souls? Because as Christians, we are concerned about their eternal souls, to push things without the attachment to God and or Jesus as the source of it for your salvation. That important link. I saw that in the movie and I thought, oh wow, yeah, that's important. Yeah, teaching the morality without the why could lose someone's soul. I just thought I'd get your thoughts on that.
I totally respect those who are seeking God in their own way, and I'm not trying to, but you can do that. You can embrace, Jesus, the Jesus of the Gospels, and these proverbs at the same time, because they are essentially what he taught as well. You can certainly acknowledge God and follow God in your own way, and yet, perhaps startlingly, recognize God in some way in these proverbs. Going back to Lady Wisdom in the Bible, she says the verses say she was present at the beginning with God. So if she's present from the beginning, is she also present in all cultures and speaking through all cultures? And yeah, you can sort of discern. You can run that by Christ as the touchstone or the filter, right? And decide for yourself. So let people come to their own conclusions.
Yeah. Well,
this is
it's why I give the pen example in all this always,
sure.
is that, anyone, any way, shape, or form deciding to live a more moral life and a good life on this planet is a good thing. But at the same time, as a Christian, I like the guy. I am indeed concerned and care about his eternal soul. I hope he will find Jesus. And the issue is, if we focus on all the other things and indeed completely sever and keep it separate from the Bible and Jesus and God, then again, we risk their souls. And I'd written down another one. I forgot, like, two birds with one stone, right? Well, that's obviously a David and Goliath reference and message that people often use, but probably have no real thought beyond that, why it may have originated. But at any rate, and I only said that one time in the show, that's my verbal crutch. A lot of people do ahs and ums and, other verbal tics to when their brain stalls or to segue. And I've developed this bad habit of saying, at any rate, to segue between things.
If I could just jump in, making generalizations is really, really hard about Africa. It's where all the great faith traditions meet. Christianity for centuries. Nubia was a medieval, hotbed of Christianity. There are ruins of churches that are still visible. Islam, of course, and the Jews of Africa, the Falasha, among others, the Jews of Uganda, and all the traditional religions too. The Yoruba have a polytheistic pantheon, comparable to other polytheistic traditions. So, it's really, and the modern movements in which Christianity has played a role, the Messianic movements of the 1960s, the force for justice and good in South Africa, in modern Christianity in South Africa. It's just really hard to summarize. But in a lot of African cultures, not all, but in a lot, you'll find something called panentheism. I don't know if you've heard about that idea, that God is in everything and everything is in God. And so with that mindset, finding God in these proverbs shouldn't be that surprising or threatening. One thing, right? Discovering these proverbs and thinking about them led me to really think about you can't get around, certain defenses of slavery based on the Bible, right? Which is called, slaveholder theology, and among others. That's sort of, one key piece of that was the moral uplift defense, that at least they were exposed to God. I think we need a little bit more humility about that idea, confronting all this traditional wisdom. If the meeting of the civilizations had been based on something other than human trafficking, yes, there was language, there was all these differences. But if the meeting of the civilizations had been premised on something, on a mutual encounter, they might have been able to discover how similar they are. At least in certain respects. I'm not saying everything's identical, not everything's the same, but as one theologian writes, once you are able to say to find something in another tradition that reminds you of something in your own, you've begun to build a bridge. Mm-hmm. And there was a systematic refusal to build that bridge from the start. And like the gracious, lovely lady who wrote my foreword, Therese Taylor Stinson, she's a Presbyterian elder. She said she experienced the book as an act of reconciliation, which was very meaningful to me personally. But she also added that, for African Americans, there was no conciliation in the first place. So that is a thought worth sitting with.
Well, a lot of people, for whatever reason, again, look down or put down like the African continent and the traditions because of, but Rome had, before Constantine found God, yes, Jesus, and monotheism, had the multiple god system. Greece, all the Greek gods, multiple god system, and people like to leave out and forget in Egypt Akhenaten bringing monotheism to the African continent. But Lot would say long before they were ready for it, and why a lot of his statues are defaced, they rejected it after he died before then nowadays becoming Christian, going back to what Akhenaten was talking about. But let's go ahead and wrap it up. Give the book title again.
Legacy, Wisdom of African Traditions and the Bible.
And again, you are Chris Morehouse. Do you have an author website, or where do people reach out to get to you?
You can find out my publisher's online bookstore, iUniverse, as well as on Amazon. If you want to reach out to me personally, I can share with you my email and they can contact you. And if you hear from anyone, they can reach me that way. It's a personal email.
Okay. Yeah. If you want to go ahead and give that out, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. I'll
take a minute. If you can hang on after, I'll share it with you, and your listeners can reach out to you.
Okay, that sounds good.
I'd be delighted to hear from folks. just no hate mail, please.
Yeah. Hey, well, you know what? I'm a public figure. I get death threats. You know, right? I wrote.
I would never.
especially because terror strikes coming soon to a city near you. Talk to Dawn Williams of the Research Show, who is a Black female Muslim, but yet, she gets where I'm going at in the book. It's not just about Islamic terror, it's about all terrorism, but yes, currently the biggest concern is what I call global Islamic jihadist interim army soldiers, Geishas, kind of like we called the National Socialist Nazis. Geishas for short. But it's about all terrorism. But of course, people make the assumption and throw out the label, oh, I must be Islamophobic or this or that, right? So I get the death threats from people who have no clue, certainly haven't read the book, certainly never have talked to me, or, people make a lot of assumptions and get crazy.
Certainly, like religiosity of whatever flavor, right? Whatever tradition can be a mask for violence, greed, other bad stuff. So it's something to be aware of. But it's part of the human condition. The line between good and evil running through every human being.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, thank you for coming on, Chris. I appreciate it. And you have yourself a great day.
You as well. I had a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having tuned in for ChristiTutionalist Politics Show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you, or autographed copies are available online direct from me via terrorstrikes.info/shop. Be sure to check out more about today's discussion at thelibertybeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, no fancy high production intro or inserts, at least yet, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help to grow the show.